All right, what's up, everybody? All right, welcome to another session of the Kava podcast. This session on Friday nights, where we like to bring some special guests here tonight and to have some interviews for you guys. So we're blessed tonight to have our first politician here tonight on the Kava podcast, the mayor of South City, District One,
District 4.
District
Yeah,
Four.
four.
Oh,
Yeah.
what did
It was just a
a flyer?
flyer.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
but it is District 4.
Oh,
South City
okay.
is District 4.
All right. So about correction, District 4. So yeah, we have a great show for you guys as always. You see value in the content and the podcast that we do for you guys. You guys already know what to do. Just smash that like, subscribe button real quick. You get notification when we do go live. And if you have any questions, any comments, if you want to drop it through a super chat, just drop it, and then I'll be able to read it at the end of the show and respond to you guys. But without further ado, we'll go right into it, and because we have a special guest, and James, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
No worries. Thank you for coming. How are you feeling? I know you just came back from a trip. How are you feeling so far?
Great.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, I went to Washington, D.C.
Mhm.
Last week, and it was for the U.S. Conference of Mayors. So you have a bunch of mayors throughout the country going to D.C. We had a lot of meetings, a lot of things to
Wow.
talk about. We even heard from the president. And after that, I rushed home. I literally rushed home. I got
Yeah.
to the airport at 6:40 for a 7 p.m. flight, and I made it.
Gosh.
So
Oh, it's on time, right?
just by the nick of it.
yeah.
Man, how many people were there? That's all the mayors coming together.
A few hundred.
A few hundred?
Yeah.
Wow.
Mayors, and just people who are associated with the organization,
Organizations.
federal workers, right?
Yeah.
Cabinet members.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of people there. I mean, it's Washington D.C., right? It's
Yeah.
basically a government town.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good networking going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And so when you were out there and they were talking about like what's happening, I guess what's the news? What's the 411 that you got back from this conference?
Yeah. So I think the biggest theme of it is there's a lot of money going to be available for cities to take advantage of from the federal government.
Mhm.
And so you might have heard of the Inflation Reduction Act. You might have heard of the Biden infrastructure bill.
Yeah.
And there's basically an unprecedented amount, like billions and billions of dollars, going down that cities can access directly
Mhm.
for climate change initiatives, for infrastructure projects. Things like EV chargers,
Mhm.
tax credits, all sorts of things that cities can really take advantage of.
Wow.
And a lot of it is, really focused on climate change and making sure that we're building a renewable energy economy for the future.
Mhm.
And as soon as I learned all that, I came straight back to South City and I said, hey, like we gotta take advantage of a lot of these new programs
Yeah.
to make sure that South City is getting its fair share of the federal funds. So
Right.
that's what we're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what do you think, what is going to be your next plan? What do you envision after knowing all of this information and going to this conference and being around all these like great people like yourself? What do you feel like? What's your envision of what this program has to offer and what it can offer for South City?
Yeah, so I already chatted with some of our city staff, and we have a sustainability officer, and we also have a city manager. And I met with them, and I said, "Hey, like there are all these programs available." And one thing that is new about these bills is that cities are able to access a program called direct pay or elective pay.
That's right.
And so, because cities don't pay federal taxes, usually you can't access tax credits, but now cities can through this elective pay program. And so we can do things like purchase electrical vehicles. We could do things like invest in clean energy, build electrical vehicle chargers, invest in safe pedestrian and bike infrastructure, like separated and protected bike lanes, wider sidewalks, all these infrastructure projects that our city can directly apply for the federal government and get that money straight back to the city.
Oh.
Usually when federal government has grants available, they send the money to the states, and the states send the money to the county, then the county sends money to the cities.
Right.
There's all these layers of bureaucracy, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
This is a program where with the Inflation Reduction Act, with the Biden infrastructure bill, like cities can directly go to the federal government and apply for those monies and just get it directly.
Okay.
That's, I mean, honestly, I can I can say that I think that that's important. I think programming, especially when, and I love how you explained like the infrastructure, like the fall down, right? Like it's really just like, and now that you explained the fall down, I think that a lot of people, and I think just for in layman terms, right? Like a lot of folks don't fully understand government and the importance of understanding your government. And I just wanted to know like your opinion in terms of like, do you feel that like voters, right? It's actually more important for voters to fully understand their government on a city and county base more so than these higher levels, or because I think for the most part when it comes to the presidency, when it comes to you know like there's these levels, right? And I think that you understand, I myself understand that there are these levels, and our community doesn't understand the levels of policy and politics. And do you think that possibly it's because there's not enough education on it?
Mhm. Yeah, I think the reason why that is because we have national politics being so sensationalized in the media, right? Like you see on old news channels, they're like, oh, Trump did this, Biden did this, this Congress member did this and that, and they're always fighting, right? Like every couple of months, they're fighting to keep the government open because they can't decide on a spending bill that would keep the government open.
Right.
And miraculously, we always find a way to keep the government open, but there's always like this struggle there, and so it becomes so sensationalized, right? It becomes very partisan, right? Like it's us versus them, like Democrats are great and Republicans are terrible, or on the other side,
it's the narrative.
Yeah, it's that narrative. It's this duopoly, right?
Right.
But at the local level and even at the state level, you don't see that type of, I would say, petty squabbling. You see a lot more action being taken. And so, of course, there's state government, right? In California, we have the state Senate, we have our governor, we have the state assembly, and they are passing, hundreds and hundreds of bills every year that is having an incredible impact on California families. And then you have at the local level, you have county government, right? They deal mostly with like, the sheriff's department, they deal with public health, they have tons of programs that they give money for, right? Like childcare, affordable housing. And then you have at the more local level, you have cities, right? And their city budgets, and then you have school boards.
Yeah.
And of course, school boards, they manage the schools. At the city level, we do police and fire, we do public works. We are the ones who fix your sidewalks and potholes. We have our Parks and Rec programs. So your parks are usually managed by the city. And what else do we have? We have the libraries. We have community events that we put on. And every city is a little different, but in South City, really try to emphasize the community aspect of our local government and really bringing people together, celebrating the diverse cultures that we have, and also just making sure that for those who need it most, we're getting the resources into those people's hands, right? So things like childcare, affordable housing, rental assistance. A lot of what differentiates local government from federal government is like things just happen much faster,
right?
And you can see the impact of the things that you're doing, right? Like if you're at the federal government, like yes, there's all this money trickling down, but you might not see all those. Well, you're not going to see all those projects, like what all that money is funding, right? You might see a couple of the big ones, but the people who see the impact, it's likely decided by your city council.
Exactly. And so it's very important, I would say, like for people in their own communities to attend these city council meetings. And it's kind of so sad, right? Because I think I've been, in the GIFs of like San Mateo County with my nonprofit that I was a part of. And based on just these like critical issues that we've been dealing with Pacific Islanders with, smoking, with, chronic conditions, and then also with just limited housing options, and also poverty in some senses, low income. And so it's really interesting to me because I think that what you're saying right now is just so important that like our communities like understand that like there is change is available, but change is so much closer than you actually think it is. Change is actually in your city. It's actually in your county. It's not necessarily so much more so outside of this, because in our government system, there are levels, and we all speak up to these levels. And so if we are not actually focused on our city and our county and their level of understanding, then and their what they can do for us, then there's actually not going to be so much change that you as an individual will experience.
Hmm.
And well, do you have any questions so far?
No, I was just curious when you and I think this is gonna go back to your story. But what made you go into politics? You know, it's a tough gig. You know, but did you always aspire to it, or was it something that just grew on you and then you finally made a decision?
Yeah, I definitely wasn't planning on it.
Yeah.
and the thing about local politics is it's more accessible than you think it is, right? So it's not
Yeah.
like it can be really tough to reach your Congress member, right? You can
Yeah.
reach your office, you can talk to a
Yeah.
staff member, but for local elected office, you could literally go to city council meetings and just wait till the end and be like, hey, like, can I say a few words to you? And so it is just, you know, especially in a city like South City,
Yeah.
like it's just a lot more accessible than you think it is, right?
Okay.
If people email me, I'll usually give them a response. But you know how I got involved. So I was born and raised in South City,
Okay.
and went to K-12 public school there.
Okay.
I was fortunate enough to get into Harvard University,
Mhm.
and there I was studying biology because I was pre-med and I thought I was on the track to becoming a doctor.
Yeah.
I was studying neuroscience.
Was that your parents' dream, or was that your dream?
It was kind of both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my mom worked at a hospital as a lab
Yeah.
tech, and I was just like, oh, I love the hospital, and I
Yeah.
want to help people, and being a doctor is kind of like, you know,
Yeah.
a good professional field to get into.
Yeah.
And I also, you know, did wet lab research
Okay.
on in a neurobiology lab.
Yeah.
And then the COVID pandemic hit
Yeah.
in 2020, and everything was thrown upside down.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
Harvard was the first university in the country to say, okay, we're going to evacuate the entire campus and tell all the students to go back home. And so I was giving 1 week notice to
Right.
to pack up everything
Yeah.
and go home.
Go home.
And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
So I came back to South City, and a lot of young people and I were, you know, the people I graduated from high school, we were in the same situation, right? Like
Yeah.
we were all kicked off campus. We were back home, kind of seeing like, you know, how can we get involved in the community?
Yeah.
We saw that, you know, COVID was really wreaking havoc
Yeah.
on our working families and healthcare, of course, but also housing, education, childcare. We saw how there's a systemic crisis of racism within our systems of public safety with the murder of George Floyd. And we saw that South San Francisco was no different. In 2012, a young 15-year-old Black student named Derek Gaines was killed by our police department. And there's largely been no justice or accountability toward that case. I think the officer, Joshua Cabillo, might even still work for San Francisco PD, not in that South City, but now in San Francisco now. And, you know, back in 2020, we you know, looked at the national energy and fervor from George Floyd, and we saw that, you know, our city was so different, and so we wanted to channel that energy into real change and accountability in South San Francisco.
Mhm.
And so we had, you know, dozens and dozens of us going to city council meetings, advocating for change. And what happened was our old mayor decided to shut down all public comment. He said, you know, we didn't, you know,
No.
oh, there's COVID and we don't want to hear from everyone. And
Oh wow.
and this was during a time when cities all across the country they were having Zoom public comment.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
like people coming through Zoom. I even emailed my local council member and I said, look, you know, look at all these cities, they're letting people participate in Zoom. You got to let us do that too.
Yeah.
Everything just got ignored.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And so, you know, we have to hold our elected leaders accountable. And so
Yeah.
a lot of my
Right.
friends that you know, all in all, over 150 public comments were silenced.
Yeah.
And so we all just started thinking, like, okay, we got to do something, right? Like,
Did he,
they're not listening to us.
Did he have a specific reason why he wanted to shut it down?
It's COVID and it's online, and
Mm.
Okay.
I don't agree with it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
still,
It's always COVID.
I still think
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, you could do it virtually, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can
that's-
still do it virtually. Every
Yeah.
other city did it.
Yeah.
And I still think that what he did was illegal. But the thing is,
Yeah.
For the Brown Act, this is what specifies you need to have public
Right.
comment. You need to report violation within 30 days.
Yeah.
And us being young people getting involved in politics for the first time in our lives,
Mhm.
It passed 30 days, and we're like, oh, yeah, we can't report them.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of why we didn't report them on that. Just inexperience, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, like we were looking for people to get to run against
The mayor.
the mayor.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who didn't live in the district. There are a lot of people who just didn't want to run in general. I didn't want to run because I thought COVID would blow over. I'd be back on campus and I'd enjoy my senior year.
Yeah.
That never happened.
Oh.
Because COVID got long and drawn out, right?
Yeah.
But I decided like, hey, why not? So I dropped my thesis, which
Okay.
which I don't recommend people to do.
Yeah.
And I decided to run for office and take a big risk. And I basically dedicated full time. I'm going to be running for city council, the place I grew up in.
Yeah.
And this was a campaign that was literally run by college students.
Yeah.
All my volunteers were people I graduated from high school. They're my college friends. The person who did the data for the campaign was a CS major.
Yeah.
One of my classmates. And so we put this ragtag team together, no experience with campaigns, and we were able to unseat an 18-year incumbent, and I became the city's youngest ever and first openly LGBTQ council member in city's history at the age of 21.
Congrats, man.
Wow.
Man,
Yes.
congrats.
Yeah.
I would just
And just for people who may be looking for to go down that career path, what are the qualifications to become elected member?
You just need to be 18 years old and registered to vote.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow, that's a lot easier than being president.
Right.
Well, for president, you have to be 35.
35, yeah, 35.
Yeah.
Yeah, 35, yeah.
For Congress, it's 25, and for Senate, for the U.S. Senate,
Yeah.
it's at 30.
Yeah.
And also, do you have to be a U.S. citizen?
Yes.
Yes. So every member of government has to be.
Yeah.
I will. I just want to double check. I know the president for sure. I just didn't know the other. Okay, so U.S. citizen and
For
18.
president, you have to be born in the U.S.
Oh,
like
so you can't be
professional.
born outside of the
But
U.S.
for every other office, Senate, Congress, all that.
as long as you're born in the U.S. territory.
No, for president, you have to be born in the U.S.
No, yeah, like the president, you're born in the U.S., but for every other elected office, then
You just have to be citizen.
yeah, citizen. Yeah.
Ah.
Okay. I didn't know that. I didn't
Yeah.
know that. Yeah.
And see, this is like this important information that is not actually known in our public.
Mhm.
It's my whole thing is like, okay, so we have the American school system, we have high school,
Yeah.
and depending on whatever your high school you go to, your teacher that teaches you, you may know it and you may not. And so, what is your thought process about like getting more of these programs, like adult programs, to teach even adults and even young folks about policy and politics and government? Because I think that there is a lot of miscommunication, misinformation, and miseducation about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it starts in school, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
In school, we often learn about the federal government, and that's mostly it, right?
Yeah.
We learned that there is a California legislature, and maybe there is a city council. And
Yeah.
then, we don't really talk much into it.
Just the three branches
So-
of government. That's all we know
Right.
from school.
Legislative, executive,
Judicial.
and
That's it.
there you go, right? That's the basics of it. But like I said, like most of the impact comes from state government and local government.
Local government,
Right. That's where a lot of the action is happening.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of the excitement is going on. And they manage, billions and billions of dollars. So it's
Yeah.
not like an insignificant amount. And while Congress is, oftentimes squabbling and yelling at each other, like state government is working together. They're getting things passed. In our local city councils, it takes 3 votes to like pass anything, right?
Mhm.
And so it's a lot easier to count to 3 than it is to count to 217 or whatever it is in
Right.
Congress, right?
Yeah.
And all their special interests and everything that they have to deal with. And so it's, that's why things, although I'd still say they move slowly, they move a lot quicker at the local level than they do at the federal.
Right.
And so I think it starts in the schools, right? We have to teach people about local and state government.
Yeah.
And the division of powers, right? So
Mhm.
like one of the most important parts of local government is that they deal with land use, right? So if you see
Yeah.
affordable housing get built, or if it doesn't get built,
Mhm.
it is a local government issue.
Yeah.
Right.
If you see, a lot of big biotech buildings going up, or if you see hotels go up, or
Yeah.
new businesses, like that was probably approved by your local city council.
Mhm.
And our city councils are usually doing everything we can to, when we do build,
Yeah.
when developers do build, we're getting fees, we're getting new parks, we're getting improved amenities for
Mhm.
people throughout the city.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of there's a lot of discussions that happen in the background about how to get a community that is built that benefits everyone in that city.
Correct.
And I think in terms of educating adults, like I think there's so much misinformation out there, right? Especially on social media.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think Nextdoor is absolutely the worst place to get your news. And the best place to get your news would be your city website, your local city website.
Right.
Yeah.
I can just say like all over Nextdoor, it's just like wrong information after wrong information after wrong information, and everyone goes crazy about whatever's going on.
Yeah.
But one of my big priorities is trying to make sure that our communications in South San Francisco is reaching as many people as possible.
Yeah.
Right.
Because right now we send like one piece of mail every couple of months to everyone, every household. We have a city newsletter that's through email, but I think we need to get into the business of texting. I think we need to get on social media.
Yeah, social media.
And really like expand our reach, not just to inform people, but also to let people know about the celebrations and events that we're having, right? Again, like back to the community building, like letting people know that, we have a Lunar New Year celebration. This year is Black History Month, letting them know about our celebrations that we have planned this month, and Pride and everything and so on. So it's just a matter of just making sure everyone stays connected and engaged.
Right.
Yeah, I think moving to social media is a great plan because you said you guys try to send one newsletter in the mail.
We send like a piece of mail out like 4 maybe more times a year.
Yeah.
It's just
but nobody really reads the mail.
Like, mail is like, what is that? Right?
What is
like,
that?
Even
especially for the younger generation, millennials, and Gen Zs, right?
It's like a text would be like so much more better because like you can see a text and it's right there and it's on your phone and everyone
gets the notification. Everyone sees it.
Right. So like the notification on the phones, and also, just like, even if it's just like a lot of folks are using like, what is that? Like apps, right? They're like apps where you can get,
we're just creating content in general into the 4 major platforms like Facebook, X. For me personally, I get most of them media. Slack.
Even if it's like Slack, and depending on wherever you are, whatever community you're part of, if you're getting things on these like smaller platforms, it can be helpul.
I mean, do you have a plan to start making social media content? Because I do see, the election is about to start. I think both the Democrats and Republicans understand if you want to connect to the youth, you have to be on social media. It's impossible to run a campaign and not be on social media, because that's where majority of the young people are. For me personally, when I go look for news, I go to X. That's where people post. I know I follow a couple of accounts where they post updated information. But is that what you're gonna do differently for yourself?
So we do have like, I guess for the city versus myself, right? Because for myself, I'm always posting, right?
Yeah.
Occasionally, but for the city, it's like we do have our city accounts, right? On Facebook, we have one on Instagram, on Twitter. I think we can do better, like when it comes to posting regularly. And posting more information. And I think one of the biggest things that we need to do is, because how are people going to find our city pages, right? Like, we need to do more like marketing, basically. Like paying for ads to like get out in front of people and let people know about things that are happening, even if they're not following the city page, letting them know what resources are available. Because I mean, we have 67,000 residents in South City, but our pages have like just a few thousand followers. So I think we can do more when it comes to that.
Right.
What are your thoughts about TikTok, making content on TikTok?
TikTok, I mean, it's a very national, it's a very like national, international platform. I don't think you can geo-target, can you? And so I just don't think it's,
maybe there's some, I don't know if you ever thought about it, but like look on some major influencers that live in South City or close to South City. I don't know, collaborate, because that's what I see a lot of the politicians are doing. They're collaborating with the big social media influencers. And there's this guy in South City I follow that he does food reviews.
Yeah, we know him.
Oh yeah. It's pretty good. So like, I'm like, okay, that's a spot for sure.
So it's definitely the social media game. I think just thinking about connecting more people with the youth and knowing a lot more about the policies and the things you have in plan. That's something I just start seeing today.
Yeah, definitely.
Might start seeing TikTok dance collaboration. No,
I don't know.
You could totally do it. Totally do it for sure.
If TikTok allows us to like geo-target like a very specific location, like just South San Francisco, I'd do it. But
Yeah.
it's just like I don't know if it goes
Yeah.
to New Jersey or New York or Texas or whatever, and I want to be really focused on.
Yeah, I think Facebook can. I
community.
think Facebook does.
Yeah, they do.
They're more specified on where you can put your ads, but I don't know about TikTok.
Yeah, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter and YouTube, they allow you to like
Yeah,
pick a zip code. Right?
pick a zip code. Yeah,
So
yeah,
all South Francisco is in one zip code. So
Yeah.
it really works out.
yeah. I don't. Yeah, not definitely not TikTok.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll
Not
see.
yet.
Right. So okay, so I had a question about just your upbringing. Like, who is James?
Mhm.
Like, tell us about who you are. Obviously, you're a community member of South San Francisco, and which is awesome. I think I'm all about, leadership in a community from a community,
Mhm.
because that makes so much more of a difference.
Mhm.
And so I just want to hear like your background story of like who you are, what was your journey, A to you don't have, it's not Z yet, so far from that, but
Yeah. So born and raised in South City.
Mhm.
And I think, one of the biggest things that shaped me is definitely my family, my upbringing.
Mhm.
My father fell down the stairs when I was 5, and he was left paralyzed from the waist down.
Okay.
And then my mom had to work 2 jobs to make ends meet.
Mm.
That was in addition to caring for my father and raising me. I also, took some responsibility in caring for my father as he was disabled. And just, growing up, that's what made me want to study biology, right? I wanted to learn, well, specifically regenerative biology, to learn how people can heal from chronic injuries. Because at that time, I when I fall down, right, I just get back up, right? I
Yeah.
put a Band-Aid on, I get back up, I
Yeah.
get better. But
That's true.
when it comes to spinal cord injuries, it's a lot more complicated, right? It's a lot harder to heal. Even and in many cases, you might not be able to heal fully. And so, that's why I studied biology. And the reason why I got interested in government is because I wanted to see, how our community can come together and support those who are the most in need, right?
Right.
I think, growing up, when my parents couldn't find me childcare, my father was in and out of the hospital. We'd really rely on neighbors and family friends to care for me.
Right.
I would sometimes be in the break room with Kaiser Permanente when my mother couldn't find childcare. And so, just growing up, I thought like, there needs to be more resources to those who need it most, because there are a lot of people who do fall through the cracks, who aren't able to access resources, who don't even know these resources exist, right?
Yeah.
Which is why we need a lot more information going out there.
Yeah.
Talk about federal programs. There are so many federal programs that are undersubscribed, right? Which means there are millions of dollars there, billions of dollars there,
Yeah.
but people just aren't applying for those funds.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's the bureaucracy, right? Like the rental assistance in California, right? You had to fill out 30 pages of information before you got a month payment. And so a lot of people look at 30 pages.
Yeah.
You might not speak English, and
Yeah.
they're like, oh my God, like,
Yeah.
how am I going to do this?
Right.
And so like we need to make resources more readily available to the people so that we can get help into their hands. And that's, that's why I study biology. It's why I study government. And it's why I ultimately said, you know what, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and run for city council.
Yeah. I had a question, because when you for your position, is it how long is your term?
4 years.
4 years, right? And you said that the previous mayor was been there for 18 years.
You've been there for a while, yeah.
For a while, right?
Wow.
18 years.
18 years. Do you what's your thoughts about like having limits? Because I had this conversation with a good friend of mine, because we're talking about a lot of senators. They've been senators for a long time, but sometimes I think it's good to have change, because especially for the younger generation, because you have an understanding of what's really going on with the world. And but what's your? I mean, do you believe that should there be term limits for certain positions, or a senator could just stay for 20, 25 years, 30 years?
You need term limits.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should not. Have
Yeah.
to wait.
Yeah.
We should not have to wait for someone to die before we replace.
Yeah.
Before we get someone
know.
to do it in there, and that's unfortunately kind of
Yeah.
how it happens a lot of the time. And it's just, just look at Congress, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just look at any tech hearing that they have.
Yeah.
And just listen to how they talk to a Facebook executive,
Yeah.
a TikTok executive, and
Yeah.
just asking these insane questions that people like you, me, it's just regular people who have an iPhone, who
Yeah.
use social media. They're like, what? Like, why are you asking this question?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Right.
do you not know what what
Yeah.
the internet is.
Mhm.
I think I forget the instance, but I think someone was asking the CEO of Google like about a Facebook problem.
Yeah.
And the CEO of Google said, "This is Google. I don't work at Facebook." and so it's
Right.
just like
Yeah.
there's just some disconnect. To
Yeah,
where, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
The thing about government is that you need to have a diverse set of perspectives.
Yeah.
Racially, socioeconomically, but also
age.
by age.
Yeah,
Right? If
yeah.
you have a government full of people who are seniors,
Yeah.
then you're going to be missing out on the perspective of those who are in their 20s and
30s. Yeah.
And it clearly shows because look at the affordable housing crisis.
Yeah.
Right.
Look at the climate crisis.
Yeah.
Like the issues, look at student debt.
Yeah.
The issues that matter most to young people are not being addressed by the federal government.
Yeah.
And then you look at the ages of everyone in the federal government, you're like, oh, no wonder.
No wonder.
Right?
Yeah.
No wonder. And the same is the case for local and state government. Like you
Yeah.
need to have a diverse set of perspectives to make sure that no one's being left behind.
Yeah.
Making sure that everyone's life experiences are being represented at
Yeah.
every level of government. And that's I'm the youngest one.
Yeah, yeah,
on the
that's-
South San
Right.
Francisco City Council, so I'm trying to hold it down for Gen
Yeah,
Z.
yeah.
But I think like you're starting to see a lot of younger people realize that their voices are needed in local government.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why they're running, right? So
Yeah.
that's why I'm not the only one. Like you see, as some member Alex Lee in San Jose, you see, Anthony Rocha and
Yeah.
Salinas. You see so many younger electeds start to run
Yeah.
throughout the
Right.
Bay Area and
Right.
California.
No, because there was this senator. I can't remember where from. I was watching him. He was doing a press conference, and he must be 80 or 90, and he just blanked out. Like,
Oh, it was Mitch McConnell.
yeah, that's him. Yeah, he just blanked
Blanked
out.
out.
Yeah, blanked
Did
out.
he die?
No, like no,
Okay,
he
kidding.
just froze. No, he didn't die, but
Okay.
Froze for 10
he
seconds.
just froze.
Right. Okay.
And it's
Woo.
And they-
embarrassing because another staff member had to come up to him and like take him away.
But
It's
this
very weird.
but this is the person that's responsible to
Right.
get things done for the people, right?
He is
Yeah.
I think the majority Senate leader in the
Yeah.
Senate, in the U.S. Senate.
Oh.
And it's
Second most
yeah.
powerful position in the entire
You
You
country.
know, I'm
And
not
it's-
gonna lie about it.
Yeah.
I have respect for the elders.
Mhm.
Okay, it's it's the way we've been raised. It's the way that like PIs, but we have respect for the elders. But that's a lot.
It's not about a respect for. I don't think it's
That's a
about a
lot.
respect for the elder. We always have respect for the elder. It's about the efficiency. Like, is this the best person
It's
to be
about
able to
having
do the job?
a diverse set of perspectives.
Yeah.
Right? All
Right.
voices at the table.
Yeah.
And I think Bernie Sanders, like he's out there, he's still dynamic. Elizabeth Warren, right?
Yeah.
They're still out there and they're doing amazing stuff,
Mhm.
right? But then there's some people who you do get to that age and it's just like you got to retire.
Yeah. If it's a parent, right?
Yeah.
If it's a parent, like we can just clearly see that some physical
Yeah.
issues. Like, we don't.
Mhm.
We got love. Okay.
It's time
Like-
to have that discussion with them.
Right.
Bernie Sanders is still doing his thing. I'm not taking it away because the great thing about the seniority is they have experience, right? That we don't know as young people, but we need both,
Mhm.
right? We just can't have all young people in government,
Right.
But we also can't have all old people
Yeah,
in government.
for sure.
Yeah, right. But it's I don't know I don't know why I just don't know why people haven't had that discussion for those people that we see that they're struggling with their age and we keep allowing them to stay. I just don't know. I think it's a lack of like youth coming up. Hey, like it's only us that's gonna go up and speak. Hey, we need change. Because I think most of those senior members, they have the same amount of friends in their same social circle, so they don't really have that outside perspective because we're looking from the outside in, right? I think it's only like somebody like you, like, hey, I think you're getting old now. we need some change. We need some change in here. I think we need somebody that's have more youth and vitality to do the job. But that always, I just started noticing the last 2 years, a lot of the members in high positions in government, just you see that there's a lot of health problems, but they're still in that position. And I see a lot of the problems in America. Like it's kind of concerning for me. I was like, these are the people that we have to trust to be able to get things done for us. We need some change, especially some youth in there.
Right. Like change and youth. Like when we talk about a younger generation, we talk about change. And so I think that for the most part, it scares people because people are scared of change. And I know change is hard, but it's also very necessary. I really, really appreciate you sharing your story, because really that's why you're in the position that you're in, because you are not, you are not a part of, a category that was given so much where you can do a lot, right? And so the fact that you're here, and you're here because you have experienced something in your life, is amazing. And
you.
I just want to say, like, kudos, because to me that is leadership. Leadership is really a life of experience, more so than anything else. And it's kind of strange because you know you're at this age now, and that's kind of where you start. You should always start. I always feel like presidency of like a country or anything should start at a younger age, and it builds up, right? Because you start to attain the experience when it comes to like supervisor of like a district, and then it becomes to, mayor of a county, and then it becomes to higher and higher, right? Because it starts from here. And so, I know in our community, like we have this like issue with like youth and like not wanting to like listen to youth, and like if you're young, you're like disregarded. We don't want to hear you because you don't know nothing. You're not my age, you haven't lived life. And as much as I can understand it, and I feel like with the API community, right? Like there's a big, strong sense of like, when it comes to elders, we must always respect our elders. And so that's what I've been raised on. And Will too, we're both Tongan, so we've been always raised on like, we always respect our elders. But at the same time, I think that for the most part, there has to be change. And we don't want to like disrespect people, because as much as it's our culture, it's as much as it's kind of this culture too. like you can see that, because I feel like I can see that too, even when people tell me it's not. So yeah, kudos to you on that. And
I had a question.
Yeah.
Well, was it a challenge for you? Because it's 21 years old. Was there a challenge going into the office? With the previous members, I used to work for the previous mayor, and it's your first time, and you have a lack of experience. Was a hard time winning their trust and your ability to do the job?
right.
Was that a challenge?
Yeah.
And did you feel that? Did you feel that from among the people that you were working with?
I think it depends.
Yeah.
Right. It depends on the person, but I feel I really worked really hard to prove myself.
Yeah.
I was elected with the same number of votes that they were.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just the same council. It doesn't matter what age you are. If you're elected to city council, you are a council member just like anyone else.
Yeah.
Right. And I asserted that, and I let people know. And I stood up for myself, when times got tough.
Yeah.
When other council members might disagree,
Yeah.
I stand my ground.
Yeah.
And I stick by my values.
Right.
And I always make sure, a lot of times folks who are younger, people of color, we get imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We get imposter
course.
syndrome.
Yeah.
Of course. And sometimes, sometimes you hear things that other people say, and you're like, what? They said that? Like,
Yeah.
clearly false. But then, it's like
Examples.
I'm not saying
Too young.
I won't say who said this, but someone said something along the lines of racism does not exist in housing.
Oh wow.
And I thought,
Yeah.
how could you say that when history is so clear, right?
Yeah.
When housing and home ownership has been, so much harder to attain for communities of color and for those who are low income than it has for those who are white and very wealthy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Things like loans not even being given to communities of color,
Right.
not being able to get loans and good interest rates for purchasing a house, and then they just are never able to, right? And that is still a disparity that exists today, right?
Yes.
Right. Banks do not give the same loans to communities of color than they do to white individuals. It's because of credit scores, because of all these characteristics that make it tougher for families to build generational wealth, right?
Yeah.
And then that follows, that is the home that that $1 million asset, literally, that you pass on to your children and your grandchildren and so on. And so it's, that's why you see so many people who are renters, right? They see their rent go up and they have no choice but to move away, right?
Yeah.
But if you have a home, right, you have Prop 13, which means your property taxes don't go up
Right.
by more than 2% every year.
Yeah.
And you just have so much more stability if you own a home. But then we've gate-kept home ownership from so many people. And so, these are, I know it got on this whole different point, but, it's just like sometimes, and this comes back to why a diverse set of voices needed, right? Because if someone comes from a home-owning family, right, they might not feel the same struggles as those who experience housing insecurity.
Yeah.
Right. And so we need to have those perspectives together. And when we do formulate policies or find or look for solutions to the problems that we see, it has to be always data driven, right? We have to look at, what the data says, what is needed, and make sure that we're delivering in a way that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, I was reading an article online a couple of weeks ago. It said that the younger generation, they've given up on buying homes. They just prefer renting,
Because live at home.
Right.
or live at home, right?
Right. And there's a reason to it.
Yeah, it's just
There's a reason.
Too expensive.
too expensive,
Yeah,
and with the
it is.
rates now, with the interest rates the way it is right now with inflation, it's especially in California. I can't speak for other states, right? But the average home in California, a decent home is almost $1 million, right?
Yeah.
So with 20% or 3%, that's still a lot of money you'd have to put down.
Mhm.
And with the interest rates right now, it's tough. It's tough to buy a house.
Unless you had the house, like you had family, and then the family passed on the house to you, or you took that house and then you can refinance it, and that's an easier process.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But as far as like buying a home in the Bay Area, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And so I kind of just wanted to ask that question. And in terms of the housing issue, maybe that is first and foremost, I wanted to ask, is South City having a housing issue? And what are your plans for that?
The entire state of California has a housing issue.
Correct. Correct.
And if anyone says otherwise, they're not correct.
Right, exactly.
'Cause, you look at the prices of the homes.
Oh my God.
You look at the prices of rent, and it's just like this is not. No one can reasonably say this is a healthy housing market.
Correct.
People are struggling, and I recently took a trip to Singapore and Hong Kong.
Oh my God. How was it?
It's great. I loved it. And they have achieved a vision of housing for all that's much farther than what we have done here in the United States.
How do they do it differently?
Public housing or social housing.
Mm.
And so in Singapore, 80% of all homes is publicly owned.
Oh, wow.
In Hong Kong, it's 40%. And it has made housing so much more affordable, right?
Yeah.
And in Hong Kong, if you live in a publicly owned flat, you pay between 4 to 10% of your income on rent.
Oh, wow.
In Singapore, it's more like in the 20s. 20% is how much income you pay for your housing, but they have achieved a homeownership rate of over 90%. And I think it's around 95%.
Yeah.
And the way to do it is, it's publicly owned, right?
Yeah.
But they give it to families in 99-year leases. And so families are still able to build that generational wealth, right? That we want so much and pass it on to their children. And also when they get old, they can sell it and downgrade, or they can sell it and upgrade when they make a higher income, right? So there's so much that Singapore is doing that makes a lot of sense and allows people to have so much stability in the housing that they're living in. Meanwhile, in the United States, 2 out of every 5 families pay 30% or more of their income on housing. That means they are rent burdened.
Yeah.
And 1 in 5 Californians pay more than 50% of their income on housing.
Yeah.
Whether it be paying for the mortgage or paying for rent. And that's not healthy.
Yeah.
What is that?
If they're paying that much money in rent, then what are you not paying for healthcare, for recreation, for schooling, for childcare? Just everything else. The cost of living is so high. What are people missing out on if they're spending that much in housing? And when we look at the United States, we only, less than 1% of our housing stock is publicly owned.
Yeah.
We've pretty much relied on the private market
Yeah.
to meet our housing needs,
Right.
and it's not worked.
Yeah.
Like, what are we
And-
doing?
No, and
Like, what are we doing?
and when we did, embark on a project of building public housing, which was mainly in the New Deal era, right?
Yeah.
19, what's New Deal era? Like 30s, 40s, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We set up we found a unique way to make public housing fail in the United States, whereas it has done incredible amounts of benefit to different countries in East Asia and Europe. And the reason being is that during the New Deal era, when we were building all this public housing,
Yeah.
it was built to fail, right? It had cheap construction,
Mm.
labor, it had cheap materials.
Mhm.
It was only meant for the lowest of the lowest income levels. And so, when you look at public housing, you don't envision yourself living there because no one plans to be low income, right?
Yeah.
People didn't look at public housing and say like, oh, my children are going to live there. No, because no one plans for their children to be low income.
Yeah.
Right. And so what happens over decades and decades of American history is you see public housing be defunded and disinvested in. And that's why there's such a negative connotation of public housing, is because we just didn't put the money to invest in these communities that need it the most.
Right.
And so the difference between Singaporean or Vienna social housing is that it's not just for the lowest income, it's for
Everyone. Yeah.
Right? It's broadly meant for everyone. No matter if you're middle income or high income or low income, you're able to live there.
Yeah.
And once you qualify, you can stay there for the rest of your life and pass it down to your children.
Yeah.
Right. Here in the United States, if you make above a pretty arbitrary income threshold, you got to move.
Yeah.
Right. You're already paying 30% of your income in rent.
Yeah.
Make $1, you make a couple dollars over this threshold, you got to move.
Yeah.
And so there's no stability. You're not
Yeah.
able to build a generational wealth. There's no stability. And then we have a missing middle income housing. And so you don't qualify for affordable housing anymore. And now suddenly you're thrown into the free market.
Yeah.
But where you struggle.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's just so many systemic issues that we have. But when you build social housing, again, it's mixed income, so it pays for itself, right? You don't have to rely on continuous public subsidy to keep that housing well kept and upgraded. It pays for itself, right? It's just the rents pay for the upkeep of that building, and that way, over the long term, you can keep those homes permanently affordable, and it will pay for itself, right? So you don't have to rely on additional public funding in the long term. And so I think, in the United States, we can do just that, right? We can take an example of successful housing models in Vienna, in Singapore, and Hong Kong, and do the same thing here.
Right.
Build the housing that we need is necessary for our growing population, for our children and our growing families, and our seniors, who are retiring and are on fixed income, and also make sure that it is long-term sustainable. There are a few. There are a few laws that make it harder, right? So, again, federal public housing. There's this law called the Fairclough Amendment that states that you cannot expand, you cannot increase the net amount of public housing units in the entire country. So you can take away 10 units and build 10 in its place, but you cannot take away 10 and build 11.
Right.
And so that's why the number of public housing owned by HUD, right, the federal government, is just stays flat. For around 3 decades now. I think Fairclough was passed in 1990. In the state of California, in 1950, they passed Article 34. And what Article 34 did, it was passed by segregationists, right? 1950s. It says the state of California, no city or any public entity can build publicly owned housing unless it's first voted on by the public. Yeah. So basically just adding an extra hurdle. It has stymied public and affordable housing construction throughout the entire state of California since 1950, and it has not been repealed. There's actually going to be a repeal on the ballot this November. It doesn't have a proposition number yet, but if you hear of an Article 34 repeal, vote yes.
Oh, yes.
So that we can build more housing, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so in South San Francisco, 2 years ago in 2022, we placed a ballot measure that would authorize us under Article 34 to build our city-owned and city-operated mixed income affordable housing. And it passed by 20 percentage points. It's immensely popular.
Yeah.
Any election, if you win by 20 points, that is a slam dunk.
A slam dunk.
Right?
Yeah.
In San Francisco is Prop K. I think that won by 40 points. Right?
Right.
In Berkeley and Oakland, it also passed 40, 50 points. Right. This is an extremely popular measure. in areas that is experiencing this housing crisis, because people know like the status quo is just not working, right?
Right.
And the laws of 1950, of 1970, like that is not going to work in
today's time.
Yeah. Right? When there's such a dire need of housing.
Yeah.
And our cities can't just be, and that's the thing. It's just like, when a housing project goes to the city council, we approve it, right?
Yes.
We have a very pro-housing city council because we realize that, housing is a need.
Right.
But then it takes years and years and years for these housing projects, even the affordable ones, to break ground, because the financing markets, because the interest rates are so high, developers aren't able to even start construction because they're not able to get the financing that allows them to do so. And so we need to have a tool that allows our cities to say, like, look, we're still in a housing crisis, right? Even during COVID and during 2008, when housing prices were so high, like, we were still in a housing crisis despite the economic downturn, and yet housing production stops because of the interest rates. And so we need to find a way where we can have a public developer, right? Meaning like our cities, maybe it's our state, maybe it's a different agency, has the ability to build the affordable housing that we need and operate it in a way to ensure that every dollar that is invested is given back to the community, right?
Right.
When a private developer builds, they're often concerned about their profit margin and their shareholders, their investors. If a city were to build housing, we can ensure that every dollar is invested back into the community, right? That means better amenities for the housing project. That means more funds to the neighborhood park.
Yeah.
Yes.
It means lower rents for the people who are living there, right? It means maybe a childcare facility in the bottom floor. And so I think when it comes to housing, we need to stop thinking of housing as just housing.
Yes.
We need to start thinking of it as a way to sustain, in the long term, various public amenities that the community enjoys, right?
Right.
Childcare centers, senior centers, parks, and marketplaces, community spaces. Like, there's so much potential that we can reach just by being able to build the housing that we need.
Yeah.
So it's really, I think what I'm hearing right now is the focus. The focus is like there's a scarcity. Like, I think for the most part, like public, like when we talk about people and being scared and our policies and our government being of an older age, they get scared of like putting in more investments in different things, because that means like we're changing, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that we're inputting more money, because the money was going to be inputted anyway, right? It just means that we don't understand that there needs to be change. And I actually have seen some of those homes. They're kind of familiar. I've seen them, and I've seen them. If you go on to, YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, you can see some of these homes. They're smaller, they're more compatible, but anybody can live in there, right? It can be built on top of one other if you need another, but it's sustainable. It's not that it's not attainable. It's more so that it's not in the jurisdiction of what we think a house looks like.
Yeah.
It's weird. I know, because I've seen it, but I don't think it's a bad idea. I never did.
I think another cool thing about Singapore is they built a lot of 4 and 5 bedroom houses.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think it's very uniquely American, where it's just like, oh, once you turn 18, you move out, and then your parents are on your own, and you're on your own. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in Asian culture, and I'm sure it's the same for PI culture, right? It's less like you have multi-generational households, right? Like your grandparents live with the parents, live with you, and maybe you have children, right? Like, you got these multi-generational households.
Yeah.
Very, very family centric, right? It's like a very Asian cultural thing, right? And in Singapore, it's just like, people are kind of expected to take care of their family, right? And so that's why they're not just building studios in one bedroom. They're building tons of like 4 and 5 bedrooms where they have
for people,
these big,
multiple families in living in one household.
Not multiple families, but like multi-generational
families.
families.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we can do, right? No.
Right.
Yeah. Just listening, that's actually just listening to you talk about the public housing, right? Because I do understand there's a need, especially with there's a housing problem evident right now in California. But I like that solution. It sounds really good to me. But I'm pro free market. I like the free market of capitalism in America. I guess my only I guess what if I had a conversation with people in the free market and they'll offer you like a pushback. If we put majority of people under 80-90% of America under public housing, do you think that's too much power for the federal government to control people's housing? I think that's something I would think about.
I mean, you're not going to get there overnight, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
if you look at Singapore and Hong Kong and Vienna, they still have a private market.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just that our government is also participating in that market.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's not saying that we're going to. There's nowhere in the entire world, right, where
Yeah.
there's no private market in housing.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the government should have the ability to go in and say, hey, we're going to raise the standard, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
We're going to provide housing at cost, right? Not
Yeah.
with 20-30% profit margin.
yeah.
And we're going to charge lower rents, and we're going to provide higher quality facilities.
Right.
And we're going to say, and you're going to look at the market and say, look, this is what we're providing. Can
Yeah.
you do better?
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And so it's adding another layer of competition is exactly what it's doing. So it's not against the market in any way. It is participating in it.
Yes.
Yeah, but the federal government would oversee it, right? They would control the public housing, right?
They could. I mean, they already do with HUD.
Yeah, we
right?
had that's all. Yeah, yeah.
But I'm talking about like the city of South San Francisco. Like,
So the city of San Francisco would control their own public housing.
we could. Yeah.
Yeah,
Any public entity could and should.
yeah.
I would
Mhm.
say.
No, yeah. I think that's just I guess if from looking outside in, and if one of the main concerns, if the city controls it, then they dictate, and then we're pretty much at the whim of the city. As long as we have good leaders, great. But if we have bad leadership, then because COVID, that's one of the things. I have a lot of good friends for business owners,
Mhm.
and the government shut down everything, and then some of them struggled financially, and some of them lost their businesses, unfortunately. But that's always been a conversation. When we talk about the government having solutions and having, and I guess that's the always conversation where we get how the government wants to help, but sometimes for a lot of people who are very, very pro free market, they might think that it's a good solution, but it's too much power. If you have a good person that has the best interest of the people, great. But if you have somebody in power that wants to take advantage and put policies in that and can use that as a way to get people do what they want them to do, like COVID, that can be an issue because I've had a conversation from both sides, people with the public housing, but also people that, I like the government, but they're also afraid what the government can also do if they have too much power, if that makes sense.
I'm just thinking like our government should be able to participate in the market.
Yeah, yeah,
And if the government's not doing great at the market, which there are state enterprises
yeah,
that aren't doing so well, so
Yeah.
people just use the private option,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
People just use private companies to get the resources
Yeah.
that they need. But we exist at a time where there is not even a public option when it
Yeah.
comes to housing, or there's
Yeah.
just very little, right? And so we can offer an option, and I have the belief that we can offer a very quality and much more affordable option.
Yeah.
And let's say 20 years from now it's not doing great, then people can go to the private market for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe 20 years from now it's doing amazing, and we have the funds necessary to embark on more and more projects. And they found a way to make it work in Singapore. They found a way to make it work in Vienna.
Yeah.
And I think we can do the same thing.
Yeah,
here.
I like the solution a lot. I like the solution a lot.
Yeah.
Me personally, I think when it comes to needs,
Mhm.
I think the government should pay for it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
well, like basic water, like
Yeah.
water, electricity. I mean, that's just me, but
Right.
but I think when it comes to the basic survival for human beings, like water and electricity and housing,
Mhm.
I think that's the government's responsibility.
And I think there's another thing. It's just like, so when I went to Hong Kong, we took a tour of their MTR, and
Yeah.
MTR is like their equivalent of BART, right?
Yeah.
Their railway.
Yeah.
Right? And they had COVID too,
Yeah,
and they saw ridership go down.
Yeah.
But they weren't facing a fiscal cliff like BART is, right?
Yeah.
BART's facing
Yeah.
Yeah.
billions and billions of dollars in the fiscal cliff.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
they
Right.
need to solve, or else
The
it's going
deficit.
to
yeah,
Right.
or else they're going to have to cut service by a lot. But MTR in Hong Kong did not face that, because they don't just operate as a railway company, they also operate as a railway and the real estate company, meaning like the land around and above their railway stations,
Yeah.
they own that real estate, they develop it, and they lease it.
okay,
And so our government should do the exact same thing,
Yeah.
right? We should be participating in that private market. It's very profitable for a lot of developers, right? And so how come our cities and our state can't also participate in that market and ensure that the profits that we're getting from these services and programs and developments are reinvested back into the community?
I think I have a solution for that. I think whoever made that idea in Singapore, I promise it was probably an entrepreneur. I really believe that the government should hire entrepreneurs into certain positions or have some kind of entrepreneur experience. That's a smart strategy. You know what? It's a great idea, right? You know what? Build the railway road and then make sure that we own the land and lease it. That's a really that sounds like an entrepreneur idea.
And
go ahead.
The special thing about Hong Kong also is that it was all land was government owned.
Yeah.
Because of the formation of Hong Kong, a British colony.
Yeah.
And then it became kind of self-governing. Now it's being returned back to China, and so it's just like all land was publicly owned.
Yes.
And instead of selling that land, right, just giving it away, the government has signed it off to 9-year leases, right?
Yeah.
And Hong Kong and Singapore, they still have tons and tons of billionaires, right? Very, very wealthy, very capitalistic countries, right? But they have been able to provide affordable housing to those who need it most, and at a much more affordable way, and also retain land ownership and control that allows them to say to have more say in the projects that are getting built.
Right.
So yeah, it's very exciting.
No, yeah, I mean, I like this. I love these discussions. We're trying to figure out solutions. I see these discussions more with the youth. Usually when you talk to older people, it's like, I know, I already know the answer. Don't tell me what to do.
We know what we need to do.
Yeah, and that's why I'm excited. I'm excited to see you on this path. I'm excited to interview, and of course, you're going to set the example, and you're going to create a pathway for the next generation.
Try my best. And I like what you say about running government, like getting entrepreneurs in there, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes we think of government as a money sink.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Like we're just going to toss money into these programs, and when a deficit hits, we're going to cut programs.
Yeah.
Once we have a surplus, we're going to put more programs, right?
Yeah.
And our only source of revenue is like taxes.
Right?
Yeah. We're going to take these taxes, we're going to throw back into these programs,
and
development, and so on. But I think we need to stop looking at government as a money sink and start looking at it as like a state enterprise. Right? How are we going to be long-term sustainable with these programs? How are we in the long run going to build programs that last no matter the ups and downs of the taxes that we get, right? In COVID, so a lot of cities in California, we get a lot of tax revenue in TOTs, which is transient occupancy tax, which is like hotels, right?
Hotels, okay.
Of course, when COVID happened, hotel
shut down,
a lot of hotels shut down, a lot less people staying at them even to this day. It's 60% occupancy, very low. And so you see a lot of cities just losing out on all these funds.
Yeah.
But if we diversify in the revenue that we get, right? Like maybe it's a little bit of taxes here, property taxes, TOTs, sales taxes, and the housing and the real estate that we operate and lease, like that is an added layer of resiliency to your city budget, and it can fund these programs for long term.
Is it hard for you, because you have I love your ideas or your you describe it, but is it hard for you to actually put it into place? I know there's a lot of processes you have to go through. Paperwork has to be filed, and I guess people that you have to get them to support you. Mm-hmm. Is it harder? Then is it harder to get it done more than we just talk about it?
Sometimes it takes time, right?
Yeah.
Like I think the toughest thing, like even though it's local government, things move pretty fast.
Yeah.
It can still take a bit of time.
Yeah.
Like it was, I first envisioned getting that ballot measure on the ballot in 2021, and then it passed in late 2022, and now we're starting to use it. So it's a years long process.
Yeah.
But our city has we have been like the master leaser for like various retail properties, right? We have owned affordable homes temporarily and then pass it on with people still living in it. So it's like it's not out of the realm of ordinary that our cities haven't managed real estate. So many cities build rec centers, they build pools, our schools build entire schools, right? So it's not like our government is incapable of managing large developments. Like we absolutely can do it. We just have to expand the realm of possibility to housing as well, and treat housing as a public amenity, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we think of parks, right? When we think of parks as, when people go into a park, we don't stop them and we say like, wait, what's your income? Like can you get in this park? Same thing with public schools, right? We don't say, what's your income before letting them into the school. We say like, look, our public green space and our public education, it's a public amenity that everyone can access no matter where they come from, no matter what their background is, right? The same should be the case for housing. We should allow people to find a safe, affordable, and comfortable place to live without an arm and leg. I think that's the vision that we have here in South San Francisco.
Okay. I just had something come in my mind when you're talking about housing. Because you said you allow everybody to come. Even the people who make too much money, would you guys still allow them to live in the public housing?
So,
Or would you reserve for people who actually need it? You know, say there's a guy who's making $1 million a year, but he wants to go into public housing. Save that spot for somebody else. Would he be denied? Like, what do you think about that?
So I love that question because if the program is so popular, right? If you have a product that's so popular, do you restrict it or do you make more of it, right?
That's true.
And the way it works in Singapore and Vienna is once you qualify for public, you have to only qualify once, right?
Yeah.
So actually, it's not available to everyone, right? It's available to around 80% of the public. But once you qualify, you got it.
Okay.
And you got it for life.
Okay.
There's not these constant income checks every year.
Right.
Like, oh, do you still live here? Do you make under this arbitrary income threshold? And if not, then you have to move, right? We don't evict people.
Did you find out the qualifiers from Singapore, like what qualifiers they have?
Basically, it's like so Singapore, it's a little different. You have to be so again, it's very family oriented.
Yeah.
You have to find a couple.
Yeah.
Oh, you have to be married. You have
to
to
move in.
Okay.
And then
They have
if you're
that.
over the age of 35, they consider you hopelessly single, and then they allow you to.
Yeah, that's hella true.
Then they allow you to get what they call HGB flat after the age of 35 if you're still single.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
Yeah. Right.
But then it's just like once you have it, you have it for life. You can pass it down to your children.
Yeah.
They're not gonna force you to move. But then they're also building enough to meet the need to where I'll give you an example for Vienna, right? If you're a young person and you apply to housing, you can get there within a year or so, right?
Yeah.
You sometimes get there even under a few months because like if you're on a priority, right? Like maybe you're a growing family,
Right.
Maybe you're disabled or something like that. They have priority lists to where you can get into a public housing unit within a few months.
Yeah.
And that's because they have just invested so much into the program. Again, like Vienna is like 60% of their housing is publicly owned, and Singapore it's 80%. Right? That was decades and decades of planning and of building that has allowed them to get to this point. Right?
Yeah.
In South City, we're not going to get to that point. Like It's going to take
some time,
decades, but we have to put ourselves on the path of having that housing stability. We have to start today, right? We can't wait for years down the line. And eventually, let's say the whole country bands together and says, okay, we gotta do something about this housing crisis.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
30, 40 years from now, we will see it being so much better than we are now.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah,
That's a long-term project.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
And that's why I think that it's very important, right? And as much as there may be different opinions, right? But I think that it's very important for the American, our government system to focus on other government systems that have a larger population, right? So China really has a larger population. So how are they catering to their citizens? Right now, there may be some backlash on that because there are a lot of things that I know that people understand and I understand as well. But as far as the structure goes, right, we're housing a lot of people in the U.S. as well, and so it only makes sense to partner with another country that is also housing a big population as well, and seeing how they're doing it. Right? Because we can't formalize an idea without not having a context. We just cannot, right? There is a process to that, right? I'd like to say a process that I've known, a couple processes, right? But for the most part, there's a process to understand that process. And so we are in the US and there is a lot of people, right? And so a lot of the times people are always, in the U.S., everybody's always like the golden hand, right? The golden hand, you guys know what that is, right? We have to be substantial with the resources that we have, right? And so at the end of the day, it's more so about understanding different processes that people go through at the same time. And saying, is this a good process? Let's implement it. You know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I had a question. You're now the mayor, and now you're in the limelight, where you're a public figure now. Did that have impact on your social life? Now you're a public figure. You're somebody that's in a leadership position in government. People look up to you. You're a leader. You're 21, right? So when I
24 now.
24, right? You 21 when you got elected, right?
I was 21 when I was elected.
When you
Yeah.
elected, yeah, 21.
24
So you're 24
Right.
now, right? So
let him know.
okay, yeah. So you're 24. So you're 24. My apologies. But yeah, when I was 24, I was, when we were young and in our 20s, we got out there. But yeah, did that have an effect on now in your personal life that you're a public figure now, or did you have to make any changes, or what, I gotta tighten up on certain things to make sure that I take this responsibility?
Yeah, I think something you have to realize is that you represent the city of South San Francisco,
Yeah.
even though you're not in any official capacity, right?
Yeah,
Not at a city-sponsored event, you still are in many ways a representative of the city.
Yeah.
So, as an elected official, I do have, I'm very cognizant of that, right?
Yeah,
I'm not going to. I mean, you shouldn't do bad things, but it's just like I do want to make sure that when South San Francisco is in the news, it's for something good.
Yeah,
right? I don't want
Right.
South San Francisco to be in the news for anything bad.
Yes.
And I want to hold myself to the highest standard. I mean, I still go out and have fun, right?
Yeah.
Busters, I go out in San Francisco, right?
Who doesn't?
But I'm
right?
very
Yeah.
responsible when I go out.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll see the news like, oh, this elected official
Got caught up.
arrested for drunk driving
Yeah.
or something like that. And it's just like I don't want myself or South San Francisco or my community to ever have to go through something like that.
Yeah.
Right. I want to keep us in the news for the good reasons,
That's
for the right reasons.
Did you have any buddies like, hey, I need to distance myself from you? No?
Right.
You're good.
Good.
Okay, question. So what is your game? Since you said Dave and Buster's, I think that you have games. What's your game?
I like Guitar Hero
Guitar
Oh my
Hero.
god.
and I like DDR.
Okay.
Yeah.
I understand.
Is that the dance?
Dance,
machine?
dance.
The
Yeah.
Yes. Who doesn't like it?
It's fun.
It's so
Yeah.
fun. You could totally just
I just like the musical game.
Yeah.
absolutely. So musical. So what kind of music do you like?
I like a lot of type of music.
Yeah.
I like alternative. I go through phases, right? So
Mhm.
so I listen to a lot of alternative in like high school. And then we went to college. It was more like indie music.
Okay.
And now it's more like EDM music, but I still I like a broad amount, right?
Nice.
So
What's your favorite?
my favorite type.
Yeah.
I like bass. Right.
Okay.
I like hip hop too, right? If there's a good
Yeah.
bass, I'm a big fan of that.
Okay. So in hip hop, who's your favorite hip hop artist?
Hip hop, kind of basic, but Drake is good. I
Drake is good. Okay.
Kendrick Lamar.
Kendrick Lamar is real.
I think he might be the only politician that knows those two.
Right.
No, I'm just saying
It's
mostly,
not a bad thing. It's a
mostly the
great thing.
older generation, they don't know who they are.
Right. So what's your favorite song from those two artists?
Favorite song?
Yeah.
Oh my god. I'm thinking of. Is it Both? It's called Both by Drake. Is that it?
Oh, I don't know. I think so.
Yeah, it's kind of inappropriate.
Okay. So there's Both. That's Drake. What about the other one?
Kendrick. I think it's called Swimming Pools.
Okay. Swimming pools.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That's what it's called. Yeah.
That's a deep song.
It's a little deep.
That's a deep ass song. Okay. So as far as this, I just want to ask one question because I did have somebody that wanted to ask me questions about there are Pacific Islanders,
Mhm.
South Pacific Islanders in South City.
Yeah.
And they kind of wanted to know what is in the midst of the city for young people and in terms of education, and then in terms of housing.
Mhm.
in some sense. And so I do have to ask that question because that was asked
Mhm.
of me to ask that question. So I do want to ask you if it's hard, if it's a little bit too much. I understand that, but
It's very broad, but
It's
I'll
very
try my
broad.
best.
Okay.
So I think for young people, right? I mean, I'm a big advocate for childcare. Like if you're really young, right?
yeah,
I think we should be working for school district and providing quality education from birth all the way to high school and beyond, right? We should
Yeah.
try our best to meet the needs of everyone. Education, of course, doesn't start at K, doesn't end at 12. It's much larger than that. When it comes to, I guess, when you're a little older, when you're in your 20s and 30s, like I'm looking for just like more inclusive and more active programming within our Parks and Rec and library department, right? I'm thinking like one-off cooking classes, and thinking like dance classes, movie nights, just like more events that can like bring the community out,
Mhm.
who are like folks that are like our age, right? Like what events that would interest us? Maybe like a bowling competition,
right.
maybe like a 49ers Super Bowl watch party at the city, like it's things like that where it's like it really brings people together.
Yeah.
And so something that I'm planning is I want to make there be like a focus group for people in their 20s and 30s, just kind of like see like what events, if we plan them, like what interests you the most. And I kind of want to see how we can get that crowd out, because when you look at city events, usually it's usually like parents, right? Like older parents or like seniors who are going to all these Parks and Rec events,
Yeah.
or it's like young kids, right, who are learning guitar or piano or something. But I
Right.
want to bring people out who are in their 20s and 30s, who are like really young, want to learn something new and get them out there. So
I love that.
That's what I want to do. And
I
housing, I
love
think I
that.
talked all about it today.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Yeah,
I think,
no, housing is that was a great like infrastructure that you
Mhm.
put out there, because the truth is there's a lot of that that's been even out on the like media.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, why don't we look at these things?
Mhm.
Why aren't we taking these options, right?
Mhm.
And is there what is like not stopping, what is stopping us from doing that? Right?
Yeah.
And like the truth is like, as a South Pacific Islander, I just have to ask, like, as for like a South Pacific Islander that like maybe is a resident of San Francisco, when it comes to like food quality, right? A lot of our community, we suffer from a lot of issues in terms of like diabetes,
Mhm.
overweight, and dying very very young, concerning through chronic conditions. What is there any, you went to this awesome conference,
Mhm.
and so is there any like funds into like helping our environment, into like getting that issue settled?
Mhm. I mean, I guess like public health, right? It's
Correct.
so broad,
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
and I think, I mean, one, we need universal health care,
Right.
right? That's not something that a city can do. That's more like a state and federal.
I love
But
that. You be
It's
honest.
tough.
Yeah.
It's tough, right? But we
Do you-
need universal health
Do
care.
you know why that has never passed?
Um,
What's the biggest obstacle that's stopping that from
private
happening?
insurance and healthcare
Yes.
industry, they don't want that. to
Yeah, they have
happen.
too much money involved. Yeah,
'Cause it is a very profitable industry.
yeah.
And I mean, when you look at all the other countries, out of all the developed
Countries that have
industrial
yeah.
nations, like they have some form of
universal.
healthcare.
Yeah,
You can
Yeah.
debate which one makes the most sense for us, but like the status quo is just not working, right? Because
Yeah.
like millions of people go bankrupt, millions of people die because they can't afford the care that they need.
Yeah.
And it's just not working, right? And
Yeah.
when you look at all these other countries, they're allowed to negotiate with these drug companies, with private providers, and say like, look, we got to lower the prices so that more people can access this.
yeah,
But we don't have that here. And so you basically have private insurance company negotiating with private medical companies.
yeah. The
They're both-
pharmaceutical company.
and they're
Right.
both making tons and tons
Oh yeah, make it
of money,
tons of
margin.
margin. Yeah,
And so, we need a single payer program. I think that's
Yeah.
absolutely necessary. Similar to what Canada has. That would be the most, in my opinion, it'd be the most applicable
yeah,
program to have here in the United States. And then when it comes to like more public health, I mean, I just think we need more education.
Right.
We need more availability of healthy foods. We need to make our communities more active. I mean, the best medicine is literally exercise, and it's so hard for people to get out there, right?
I know, right?
We're such a digital world,
Right.
but it's just like I mean, one of our most attended events in South San Francisco was, we call it the Fun Run. It's like our, is like for over like Thanksgiving weekend, we had like a big run,
Yeah.
and like 1,000 people showed up
I know.
in South San Francisco, and it was like raining too. I was like, oh my god, and so it's just like, we can host city events, we can have sports teams and run by our Parks Rec department. I mean, we can do a lot to keep people active, even
Right.
after they graduate
Even
from.
like when it comes to that, and I'm always about public health.
Mhm.
It's all about behavior.
Yeah.
Right. It's also about policy, because policy initiates behavior. But when it comes to behavior, don't look at me like this. Don't you dare. Because
I don't know.
This is our community.
I mean,
No. Say it.
no.
This is our
When it
community.
comes to health, I mean, I'm a big advocate for
You could.
taking care of your health, right?
Yeah.
It's just hard for me because I think that the internal motivation to be healthy starts with you.
Mhm.
That taking that personal responsibility and accountability on yourself.
It's a very Asian mindset.
No, I'm just saying, like,
Culturally, this is truth. You know it. You can hear it.
yeah.
Because you know your mom is. You can
No,
hear that.
I don't have a problem with those policies and those ideas that you have, but it's hard for me to see that that's going to have impact on people if they've lived a certain way for their whole life.
Yeah.
That that's going to change their lifestyle. It's a really hard thing to do.
Right.
So because I've seen, I've been unhealthy before, so it took a lot of mental, personal accountability on myself to sit down and really dedicate myself. And I know people like that. I do agree. As a society, we should be able to try to do things to motivate people to be more healthy. But then you're combating with all the junk food that's available, or everything that's encouraging people not to go work out. So it's
another
tough.
thing,
It's tough.
It's like in other countries, they don't allow for there to be so much sugar in our foods.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And then it's like, and also the portions. Like when I went to Europe or Japan, and you get this portion, and it's just like a lot smaller. Right?
I'm like, oh, okay.
Is it appetizer?
But here
Yeah.
it's like everything you get, it's just like you're stuffing yourself with carbs and fats
Right.
and everything.
That's
Well, I will take this home
Hey,
and
but
thank you.
But that's
Right.
that's America.
I know that's
Right.
That's American
The
dream.
bigger the
very
better.
American.
Yeah.
Right. So as much as we're saying this is the bigger the better, is as much as we're saying that who in the right mind, coming from a different country that has nothing, would say no.
No, that's why I came here. That's
Right.
In my first McDonald's.
You always gonna say yes.
When I first came here,
always
the
gonna
first
say
thing I
yes.
wanted to do was eat a Big Mac. I seen it on TV. I was like, I want that Big Mac.
But I guess that's the mindset, and you can see like there's a similarity in like API culture, MPI culture, where it's like very individualized. If I, suffer from this and I die from this, it's my fault. And so it's okay. And it like there's a different mindset. I'm very outside the mindset of the people.
I think two things can be true. I think we can all agree that there's certain things we can do to change as a society, as a government, as a policy, but then also it's still their personal responsibility. So it's not one or the either. I think two things can be true. So we can help as a society, but then also you have to take accountability for yourself.
You kind of it's definitely both.
Yeah, it's both. It's a both thing.
You see this.
The thing is, like, I mean, it's like kind of like it's behavioral too, right?
Yeah.
It's very psychological. Like if you have like a really sugary drink in front of you, and like I guess like lukewarm water, right?
Yeah.
People are probably gonna take that sugary drink that's like right in front of them.
That's better.
Like when you have
Right.
like when you have like I don't know, is it like Panera? Like your monthly subscriber, and you basically get free refills all the time.
Yeah.
For these really unhealthy drinks, then like you will probably just go there and get it for free.
Right.
Then and like let's say like you don't have clean water, because some places in the country you can't just drink the faucet water. Water. And like, are you gonna buy bottled water, or you go to Panera for your free drink, right? So it's just like a lot of it's just like making the healthy choices available. Right. And making sure, because I don't know if you heard of like food deserts or food islands, where it's just like people like their nearest market is like a Walmart, and not like a grocery store, right?
Oh,
like
wow.
they don't have food being grown locally, like fresh produce. They're like their only option sometimes is like fast food, or like junk food, and so it's just like a lot of it is just like making sure that food is available, right? And then I think we can see a lot of change that way. And I think in the city side, I mean, it's like making sure that we have supermarkets, right?
Yeah.
Like supermarkets, not just like McDonald's and Burger Kings everywhere.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Also, making sure that we have parks. Like exercise is the best medicine, right? And if we have good parks and good fields, then we'll see more people play tennis with their friends, pickleball, ping pong, baseball,
Who doesn't
all that.
like tennis?
Right? Yeah.
Or
So
pickleball.
if we make more like sports courts available, then we'll see more people use them.
You know, something that bothers me, or not bothers me, but you know, if somebody wants to go to their local park that's close by their neighborhood to exercise, they'll drive there to go to the
Like
park.
this.
They'll drive there and go to the park and then drive. I was like, just walk.
there,
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying is that, you know, I understand, like, you know, having policies for, you know, lessen the sugar or maybe lessen the portion, but ultimately it still comes down to personal choice. The Coca-Cola's right here, the water's right here. You still have to make a choice. You know?
Okay, so I will bring up this real quick, right? Griselda. And this is like a mob woman that was like a drug dealer, right? And the truth is like, we don't ever think about this, but sugar, right, is a drug.
Yeah.
It's a drug to the
addictive.
It's
American
addictive,
people.
yeah.
Correct. It's incredibly addictive, and it's incredibly addictive to the American people, but not only to the American people, but globally. Right. And so if, you know, our governments or our, you know, governments that have, you know, relation to our entities that are in partnership with us want to do this because they want to gain more money to, you know, create better things for us, it should just be stated. Because the truth is like, look, China. They have increased in diabetes rates far higher than I've ever seen.
In China?
But yes, China. But that's only because there's a higher population of that in globally, right? India has skyrocketed, right? The US, obviously, we know it's skyrocketed. We've talked about this for like a month or two, right? And so the truth is like, when it comes to what we need to change as a system, what we need to change right now is the food production. Because I don't actually think that what I'm drinking and eating is actually food or anything that actually comes in my body. It actually may be poison. And if it's a part of population control, say it. Why are you so scared to not say it? It's not okay. It's okay for you to say this is where we're at. It's not okay for you not to say this is not where we're at.
Yeah.
Because if it's where we at, say it.
I think because sugar is addictive, right? Like a lot of these companies are saying, like, if we put more sugar in it, more people will buy it.
Yeah, there's an incentive, right? Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of that might be where it comes from, right? It's just like they want more people to buy their product.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, I know.
Which is fine. I don't. The thing is, governmental entities and corporation entities will always be combined. We will always work together, but there needs to be a higher policy on that. Because the thing is like when we do work together, so much so, you will see these disparities, and these disparities not only implement our communities, but other communities outside the U.S. Right? And is it a part of population control? And if it is, say it. What the hell?
Yeah.
I know I'm not crazy when I say that the numbers that I'm seeing in these different countries are not reflecting what's actually been seen. Right? Like diabetes in China, in the US, the ideology of what Asian people are slim, skinny, healthy, whatever, right? But the risk of diabetes, the actual risk of diabetes and the actual people that are being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes has skyrocketed. Almost above 50%. I know I'm not crazy. Am I? I don't know. These are just the stats that are presented. And if the stats that I presented is not correct, then I don't know. I think that there's a bigger issue in terms of like humanity levels besides everything else. And that's like, okay, so we're talking about the US, we have our issues, but when we would talk about a country that's larger in population size, they have the same issues and it's larger.
I had a question for you. I'm interested to hear your opinion. I know you went to Harvard, and there's a big student college debt crisis. I think there was a article I read, but I think the average college student has a couple thousand. I don't know I don't remember the
few 10,000.
Yeah, a few 10,000s
I wish it's a couple thousand
of college debt, right? The average for the average college student. So, I always have this debate with my friends. Do we need to encourage our kids to go to college? Is it worth it? Is it worth it at the end of the day, long term? No, from my perspective, if you're looking to go into a specific professional field, I would love to I would love for you to get a degree in that specific field. Like, if you go into a medical degree, being a scientist, being a lawyer, all those things that need a specific degree and dedication to get that skill. But there's also a stat that also shows that I think almost 60-70% of people who graduate don't go into the same profession as a degree, right?
You're looking at one.
Exactly, right? But they have to end up paying the debt to something that they never use, right? So that's always a conversation. I'm just interested to hear your opinion, and of course, you're a political leader. The next, you're part of the younger generation, and you're aware of the things that we're going through. So what's your take on that? Should we be encouraging kids? I know that's usually an old, more traditional way of upbringing. Our parents understood back in the day, like they wanted the best for you, so they encourage you to go to school. And going to school maybe 40-50 years ago, when things was a lot cheaper and housing and necessities were a lot cheaper, it made sense. But now it's not the case. So there's always a conversation, and also there's another side of it. Colleges are a business at the end of the day. They make a lot of money, so they want you to go to school. But what's your take on it? You went to Harvard. You have friends. I don't know if you have friends that have college debt, but is it worth it? Is it for the next kid going? If if you're watching this right now, if you know what you want, right? If you want to be a lawyer, if you want to be a doctor, if you want to be an engineer, go to school. But let's be honest, most of us didn't know what we wanted to do going to college. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I played sports, so I just picked something, right? And I'm not doing what what I graduated for, like you.
What would you study?
Psychology, right? I learned a lot, but there's a lot. Majority of kids going to school have been sold, this story that you have to go to college to get a good career, and I think that's a false narrative. Like you don't have to go to college to have a decent and a good career to financially support yourself. And also, there's also a lot of companies now. I know Google for sure. Like they don't even require degrees. They just want experience. Like if you can do the job, because they realize that people with more practical experience are a lot better than people coming out of college because they don't really know how to do the job. They know the textbook knowledge, but there's a difference between textbook knowledge and actual real life practical work. But what's your thoughts on that? About should we kids going to college, is it worth it long term for the average person? I'm not talking about the specific individuals that know exactly what they want, but for the average kid at 18 out of high school going to college because everybody in society or their parents have told them to go to college. They don't even know if they want to college. They don't even know if the degree they want to do. All they know is their friends are going to college. I guess I'll go to college, and I have to take a loan to to go to college. What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so I think everyone has a different path, right?
Yeah.
Right way to do it.
Yeah.
Some people graduate from high school and they can go straight into workforce. They can start a business and be very successful.
Yeah.
You can go to community college and do a couple of years there and then transfer to another university.
Yeah.
You could go to a four-year university. You could go to a trade program, right, like apprenticeship.
Yeah.
And start developing, right, like homes and buildings and all that. So I think there's like a lot of pathways.
Yeah.
There's going to be more apprenticeship programs for like teaching and also healthcare that don't necessarily require like that 4-year university degree. And so, my view has always been like, it's going to be different for everyone.
Yeah.
Right? But I will say, like, in my I guess 2.5 years at Harvard, because it's cut short during the COVID.
Yeah.
But like I enjoyed it a lot, right?
Yeah.
Because when you go to college, you're not just going there to learn, right?
For the experience
You're going there
also.
for the experience, like
And networking.
Yeah, networking, right? It's gonna be your first 4 years away
Yeah.
from home, right?
Yeah.
Because you're usually living out of your home.
Yeah.
In dorms or by yourself with roommates. You're going to be exploring, right? So like you're not just taking classes for a major, you're trying different majors, you're trying different classes. Like even if you're a science major, you can still take like an English class, right?
Yeah.
Or you can still take physics class or a psychology class, right? That is your avenue to really explore that you didn't have in high school, right? In high school, you take these set courses.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone's kind of like on that same pathway, but in college, that's where you can really explore and see like what do I really want to do?
Yeah.
Right. And I think like for that 70% of people who graduated with a major and did something else, maybe that's because they realized that the majors they studied was not their passion.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they decided like I'm gonna go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like the beauty of it is right. You go there, you learn something, you take all these experiences, and then you go into the real world and make the best use of it.
Yeah.
I don't think you should be graduating with tens and tens of thousands of dollars in debt.
Yeah.
That can be very debilitating.
Yeah.
For many people. But I think that's more so a problem of the system than it is the individual.
Yeah.
Right? In most other countries, we don't see these levels of insane levels of debt. Right?
Yeah.
They publicly subsidize a lot more of their higher education. And I think that's something that we should be looking into is expanding the UC program, expanding the CSU program. A lot of our community colleges are now tuition free. I believe in San Mateo County community colleges. So it's just like expanding our systems of education to where more people can access it, and they can access it at a low cost to where they aren't, tens of thousands of dollars in debt, right? And I think that's something that we need to keep on going. So
I think another conversation that needs to be had is you don't necessarily have to go to college right after high school.
No,
like you can
gap years.
Exactly, right? So you can. So I think that's also something I disagree with that's being pushed to kids, that you absolutely have to go. And then if you go to college after, oh, you're too old. Like everybody looks at, oh, why is this old person here when you're just like 25, 26 or 27.
I have a friend who he graduated from a local high school, and then they took a couple of years off, worked couple internships, and then they applied to Stanford, got right in.
So, I think that's a better way, where if you don't really know what you want to do, I think it's better for you to not go to college, but go figure that out in the real world, or just go to start working and you can figure that out, because college is always there. You can always go back at any time and go to college and graduate. At least when you're going back, like you're going there with intention, like specifically why you're going and what major do you want to go into, and so that way you're more likelihood to actually complete it. But 18 years old, going out, don't really know what you want to do. You're still a high school kid, thrown into an environment with a lot of partying going around in college, and you're by yourself for the first time away from home. I don't think it's the most conducive to get, to be the best opportunity for you to utilize, so that way you get the most out of it. But I do agree, the great thing about college is, you get that experience, you get network, meet people. That's good. But I think I think if you have to figure out a better way to do it, like you said, the system, it's just, if you don't know what to do, you go figure out, go in the real world, get some real practical experience. Trade school, I think I love trade school, where you can just go work a specific trade, get a certificate. And there's actually I was reading an article where if you go to trade school, most trade schools, you get paid more.
Yeah.
When you have a certificate, especially when you're starting out with a new job. So I think it's just a lot more advantageous.
It's just like a pathway, right?
Yeah,
You start as an apprentice, then you work your way up to being a journeyman, and like the way that these unions have developed their programs is just like it's a very stable job, right? And you're making a higher income than most.
Exactly.
Which is what a lot of people don't realize. Like if you're a union electrician or carpenter or a plumber, right? Like you are making like a really good amount. In the Bay Area, especially in the Bay Area.
But there's a social stigma. Oh, if you didn't go to college, or like, people look down on trade schools because going to college is like a level below. And I think that's something that we have to eliminate.
You can also do both.
You can do but
like I know people who went to 4-year university and then they went straight into the trades.
Yeah, I know people going to trade school and they're making more money than the people who went to college.
Yeah.
So I just think that the college thing should always be provided as an option, not a necessity, not a mandatory. You have to go to college or right after high school, go to college. Especially if you don't know, because I don't think it's beneficial if you don't really know what you want to do. But if you know you're deep in your heart, you want to be a lawyer, you want to be a chemist, you want to be a scientist, you want to be an engineer. Yeah, I don't have a
I
problem.
think it's the best place to go if you don't know what to do, because then you can explore the different classes and different topics, right? Subjects, right? Because like when you look at the amount of classes that high schools offer, it's like it's very standard, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you have a few AP classes, maybe a couple, like maybe a CS class, maybe like a biotechnology class. But like when you go to colleges, it's like they have psychology, they have chemistry, they have physics, they have biology, they have English, they have econ, they have poli-sci, they have math, they have applied math, right? They have everything, right? And so you can literally go there. You can start at a community college, right? You can go to your local community college where you're not paying, $70,000 in tuition or whatever it is right now.
That's a better way to do it.
And you go to community college and say like I want to try out CS, I want to try out psychology, I want to try out, whatever it is. Try it out, and then that's how you can transfer to the four-year university.
I think that's a better way. I think I like that idea. Start with the community college. If you don't really want to do, at least that if you change your mind, you're not tens of thousands.
Oops.
Exactly right.
I actually just had an idea. Not an idea, but it's something that I've been thinking about for a very long time.
Yeah.
And the issue is high school.
Mhm.
And it actually is middle school.
Yeah.
And it actually is our school system from there and there. Right? Because the truth is like a lot of like even my mother, like my mom told me that she was like studying calculus in like grade school, and that's like back in the islands in Fiji.
Mhm.
And so the thing is, it's like it's very strange to me that a lot of the times when we come here, we have this like idea of like these are very good both ideas. I will always say, get the best education that you can. If you can be a doctor, everything and anything, go do. You must do it. But I will always say that money is a big aspect, and if you don't have, the opportunity and the right to do it, then by all means find another way. There's another opportunity to make money and to make as much money as somebody that has an education. But the actual truth is like how much do we pay, right, in our tax dollars, right, to support our education system here? It's a joke. And even when it was through the pandemic, they wanted we'll blame it on the pandemic. That's not the truth. The truth is like there needs to be more of these conversations in our school systems, in the high school level, and starting in the middle school level, because that's how much money we actually generate in that on a local level, right? And so the truth is like when I told you, when we had the whole discussion, right, when Joel was here, one of our brothers as well, when he was here, and I said, we have this idea that's always good against evil. There's this too mundane ideology, right? And that is not okay, because that is not in the system we live in. Right now, what we're living in right now, that has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with we are not processing things the way we should. And the process should be really is if we are paying this much in tax dollars for our children to be educated on a great level, right? And only certain children are able to fixate that ideology like yourself, right? At a younger age, then that's when we understand that like there's a problem here, because this is a small statistic. It is.
Which
unfortunately.
one? Which statistic?
This right there.
Yeah,
this is a small statistic, right, in our system right now, within San Mateo County. And the fact that is, we should be questioning that on a big level, right?
Yeah.
And the bigger level is, we are not actually teaching our children the system of where they live in. We are not. They have no idea they have no idea of the system they live in. And then you bring them into a system, they learn all these things that have nothing to do with their upbringing here in the system. And then either they succeed in it and figure it out on their own, or they go to jail, or they're in poverty, or they OD on drugs, or they die from an accidental thing, right?
Yeah.
And so that is a statistic. When we talk about statistics, statistics is real. Statistics, numbers are real, and it's sad.
Yeah.
But when I explain this to you, I wanted to say that this is the explanation. And the explanation is there's a lack of education when it comes to our high school and middle school education that really matters in the world.
Yeah.
That's it, you know?
Yeah, I think the teachers should be paid more.
Mhm.
You know, if you know, I think you know, when I went to high school, I graduated in 07, but I've seen videos of how high school is now. It's totally different from my experience, with the way the kids are behaving, and so I think the teachers have a big responsibility because they're teaching the next generation. And I think because I've seen a lot of strikes, especially here in the Bay Area with teachers, I definitely think they should be taken care of. So that way, I know 2 teachers personally right now that they're struggling financially. They're barely making it, barely, and I'm pretty sure that has to affect their psychological aspect of them. When they have to go to school and deal with all these kids, and then still happy and don't worry about where she's gonna eat or how she's gonna pay the rent. But yeah, I definitely believe there's some issues in our education system. I wish they could insert more practical classes that has more impact on the real world, like financial literacy, banking, taxing, taxes, all that stuff. That stuff that's going to be useful for them.
Right.
As much as I learned geometry and all those things and the periodic table, I've never used that information ever since high school.
It was only the broad tools of what you were needed to have if you chose something that you wanted to choose. And the truth is like we only in high school and in middle school, we don't know what we want to know. We don't know what we want to be. We don't know what we want to be.
Yeah.
So why would we learn all these things and we don't even know what we want to be?
I have a reason, but it's more of a conspiracy theory.
Well, the thing, and that's okay because that's kind of the thought process of everybody.
I just think I just believe I think that the American education system is built to create workers.
That's not conspiracy theory. That's the truth.
Yeah.
Well,
Some people might think it's a conspiracy theory or it's a rabbit hole or something. But
it's literally not. Historically, the
Yeah.
education system in the United States
it's to build workers.
Like public education started during the industrialization.
Yeah.
They wanted
People to work the
people to
factories.
be workers, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's just followed. Like we
Yeah.
need people to be very servile,
Yeah.
to not speak out.
Yeah.
So that's why it's
To accept
standard.
whatever that's going to be paid, whatever minimum salary or income you're going to get paid for.
I wish I had this PowerPoint in front of me because I have a good friend who's a school board member and
Yeah.
he does this amazing presentation about like the history of public education, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And how literally like it was meant to like educate people into being productive members of society, i.e. workers.
Workers,
right?
yeah.
Workers for these companies
Yeah.
and these production facilities,
Yeah.
and these manufacturers.
Right.
And so that's like how it was meant to be. And
Yeah.
that amount of standardization like doesn't necessarily teach people what they need to succeed and thrive.
But thrive. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also not necessarily what they need to be like entrepreneurs and
Right.
to try new things, to be creative, right?
Yeah.
The arts, right?
Yeah.
Where people really thrive in.
Because
And so
I'm glad that a politician affirmed my theory.
Well, it's not a theory.
It's never been a theory.
No, I know.
Right, it's never been
The
a
reason why I
theory.
say it because there's some people that I have talked to like, oh, that's just a theory. You're looking way into it. There's no system. There's no outside influence to make to make that specific so people are gonna be that way. But I've just watched some videos. I did some research on my own. But yeah, and also if you just look at the way we go to school, right? It's just like going to a job. We go in the morning, there's a lunch break. There's bells. There's ding. You get like just like a lunch break
Very
bell.
routine.
There's a routine
Yeah.
aspect. It's like working in the factory. The only difference is we're going to school. It's like it's priming you, to be a
Right.
worker, right? Yeah.
So that's why in the beginning of this whole podcast, I've said that as Polynesians, like Pacific Islanders, we have no idea where we stand in the U.S.
Mhm.
We stand nowhere.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean when you say
nowhere?
stand where?
We stand nowhere. We are literally categorized in a system, right, that is meant to, predict, like keep us as production workers, right? We're gonna work, and then we're gonna die before our retirement age, and that's okay in a sense if you're okay with that, right? But it's not okay if you don't know that. You should know that. Like
Yeah.
you should know that. Like that should be available information for you before you come into this country. Like, and look, obviously, right? The faces is like, no, we want to know the American dream. We want to live the American dream. But really, statistically wise, that's not the American dream. Number wise, that's not the American dream. The numbers will always tell you what the American dream is. The American dream is you are going to come here, you are going to, proceed in like giving more to the capitalistic, industry that's here, more so than those who will not.
The
At
one
a
that-
higher and conductive lower.
Yeah. The only thing the way I'll respond to that is I do understand that America it's not perfect. There's a lot of issues that we definitely have to fix, and I'm excited that we have people like you that's willing to take that task, that daunting task, and make some changes about it. Most people just complain and do nothing. Or that's most people.
Run for office.
Yeah, right. But you saw a problem, you saw a need, and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna do something about it. And I think that's very honorable and very respectful. But I love America. I know it's imperfect. I know every country has its problems, but when I look at the overall of what America brings, I still believe it's the best place to live compared to other countries. The freedoms, the things that we have, the luxuries and the things that we enjoy here, the rights that we have, it's a lot different. And I think it's a lot different than most countries. But I understand like we need to fix these issues. But I think there's a way to do it to not kind of put America down. I think sometimes when I hear America, I wasn't born here, but I'm pro-American. Like
Yeah.
I love America, and I'm hardcore.
He's a Trump fan.
I'm hardcore American, but because I came from Tonga, so I saw the differences in my opportunities as far as over there compared to here, and I do know there's issues that we have to fix, but but that's life. Every human being, it's run by humans. As human beings, we're imperfect, so of course the system will always be imperfect. But that's why we have to, work together, hire good people, so we hold each other accountable. But to me, the American dream is coming here and making something out of yourself, and I think that's what the American dream is. You can be whoever you want to be, and the opportunity is always given to you. And you're a perfect example of the American dream. You had a lot of obstacles growing up in your upbringing. You went to Harvard, and then you just made a 360. You know what? I'm going to be a politician because I see it as a problem. I want to do something about it, and you stood by what you believed in, and you did it, right? So, to some people that may be like damn near impossible, but that's the beauty of the American dream. Nothing's impossible, right? If you can believe it, if you can dream it, if you can believe it, and if you're willing to put in the work for it, that to me is the embodiment of the American dream. And there's countless examples we've seen in history of people that come to this country or even born in this country that's literally started from the bottom and they rose up and became somebody really important, and to be able to contribute not only to their families but to also society. So I know, I'm not saying that there's a lot of problems and obstacles we have to deal with, but the opportunities are still there. Because sometimes I think there's sometimes when people talk about all the problems in America, I'm like, go to a third world country, man. go to all these countries, and
That's true.
all the things that you enjoy here, you start to see that some other countries don't have that. And I know I love Monica. I love the conversations that we have and to go back and forth. But I think it's always good to address the issues. But I also I think for a lot of Americans, we can address the issues of America and still be pro-America. But sometimes when we have these conversations, and I have it with my friends who live here, and they talk about how bad America is. Like, have you been to 90? Do you understand that the way you live right now is better than probably 95% of people who live in the world? I think
If you're
that
rich.
yeah. Because
Right.
I mean, if you're rich, you're living better. But if you're poor, like if you're struggling for healthcare and housing, like it really. I mean, there are a lot of places in East Asia or Western Europe where they have a stronger social safety net.
yeah.
Where people,
Yeah.
but the thing is, like, we do have the largest GDP
Yeah,
per capita
yeah,
here,
yeah.
right?
Very
And
true.
so, like, imagine the potential, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I think a lot of my criticisms, at least for the United States, it comes from a place of love.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like I do love South San Francisco. I love California.
yeah.
And like I want everyone to have that level of
Of course,
right?
of course.
When we talk about like rights, right? I mean, of course, like our liberty, our civil liberties,
Yeah.
our civil rights,
Mhm.
but also like we have economic rights,
Yeah,
right? We should have a right to clean air and clean water, right? Address climate change. We
Yeah,
gotta be
yeah.
investing in renewable energy, right? We
Right.
have to be the right to housing, right? Like no one should, in the richest country in the world, right? No
Yeah.
one should be sleeping on the streets with a lack of shelter, right?
yeah.
In the richest country in the world, there should not be anyone that's going hungry,
Yeah.
or facing dirty tap water, like
Yeah.
like polluted tap water, right?
Was it that was that city in Detroit?
Yes.
Flint,
Flint.
Flint.
Yeah.
but also all over the country.
All over the country. Yeah.
There's places who do not have clean drinkable tap water like we do here
Yeah.
in California.
California. Yeah.
And we healthcare, right? So
Yeah.
many other countries. So we spend more per capita on healthcare than most countries that even
Yeah.
that provide healthcare.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's wasting money, right?
Yeah.
Billions and billions of dollars going to administrative and bureaucratic waste in the United States that could be used for preventative healthcare, right?
Yeah.
Public health.
Mhm.
That could be used to be just treatment and
Yeah.
just making sure that people have what they need. I mean, education, right? California, we're the 44th in the entire country in per
Yeah.
capita
Right.
spending,
Yeah.
So,
Right.
like, yeah, we're spending a lot, but
That's
we're also
a real number.
We're like our own
number.
country. We're like our own country as far as GDP.
Yeah.
but 44th is like we are spending some of the least per child in
Yeah.
the entire country. So it's just like we can do a lot more. And imagine if instead of spending so much money on our military, right? Our military, which is larger than the
Any
next
other
10 countries.
Yeah, 10 countries combined.
Combined.
Yeah.
Right. Imagine if let's just say we took a fourth of it, right? And we invested it into solving homelessness, get these people off the streets,
Yeah.
get them education, put them in mental health care, in substance abuse treatment centers. I mean, think of how much we can do with just a fraction of that military budget, right?
Yeah.
If we see that money trickle down to the states and to the cities,
Thanks.
I think we can solve a lot of our problems, right?
Right.
We are the richest country,
Yeah.
right? That is a
Yes.
fact. But and these problems aren't unsolvable.
Oh,
It
yeah,
just requires the
yeah.
political will to say, like,
Yeah.
Right.
instead of profiteering over all these wars happening all,
I have
all
an
across the world,
idea.
we spend
Right.
it here and take care of our people.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and that's why I believe and that's why I love social media. That's why I love this modern time is we can have these discussions, right? These discussions didn't exist 50 years ago, right? So that's why I love the modern times technology, the youth, and all of us having this conversation. But James, thank you so much for coming in, for being
thank
part
you.
of the pod. I just had one more question before we conclude.
Mhm.
Are you any ambitions to go higher?
We'll see. We'll see. I mean, I ran for state assembly in 2022, right? So
Okay.
so I did run for state office, and I do think that state office is a very exciting place, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Congress, it's hard to get things done. Things take forever. You're dealing with a nationwide special interest. You're dealing with 100 senators. You're dealing with 400 legislators. You're dealing with the president and
Yeah.
and the Supreme Court and all this. In California, it's like 40 senators, 80 assembly members, and
Yeah.
a governor, right? It's like in Sacramento, it's Sacramento, capital California, right? It's much smaller than you would think.
Yeah.
Right? Like a lot of you can know all the power players, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In DC, it's like this whole other universe, and so I think like when it comes to getting things done and like seeing the impact,
Mhm.
it's state government and it's local government for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, you got my full support.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, because when you make it big, I'm like, I know that guy.
Right.
He actually have a podcast with him. His first one when he first started.
Yeah.
And now he's our governor.
Right.
I'm a dreamer, so man, that'd be cool. That'd be dope.
I definitely just know that it's about like really experience, and it's about the way you treat others. And
Yeah.
like when we're coming up here in the elevator, and like there was a Hispanic person that was trying to come for DoorDash.
Oh yeah.
So optimist to help.
Yeah.
That's a real like,
Yeah. That shows who you are.
That shows who you are.
I hope we made it to the floor.
Yeah, I know.
He looked confused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's those type of things that I think that, people will never see, but for the most part, we saw it.
Yeah.
And
yeah, keep doing your thing, man. Excited.
Thank you.
Well, but James, thank you so much for making the time for being part of the podcast. Definitely appreciate you. Any final thoughts you want to share, everybody? Final message for everybody that's been listening?
Yeah. We need more good people in government, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's oftentimes like the reasons why our communities, and I mean like young, Asian American, PI, right? The list goes on. One of the reasons why we lack representation is because we lack people who are willing to run.
Right.
And it's not easy, right? It's very hard, but we need more good people in local government.
Okay.
It is necessary. And there are a lot of races, especially in these smaller districts where it's like, you win by a couple thousand votes, right?
Yeah.
It's not like Congress where you have to win by 100,000 votes.
Yeah.
It's just a couple thousand. So
Yeah.
we just need more people to run
Okay.
and be that change that they want to see in
Right.
their community.
And if anybody wanted to support you or find you or get information, then where would they go?
Yeah. So social media.
Yeah.
Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. If you just Google, if you do my name, James Coleman, SSF, like South San Francisco SSF,
Okay.
I will pop up.
Okay. Sounds good. Monica, final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I think it was so, empowering to our community, because a lot of us have a lot of information when it comes to politics, especially when it comes to politics when it comes on a local level and county level, and how important it is for our communities to really chime into that. So for those that are out there that are living in a certain city, please go to your city council meetings, like really engage in that, because that's where the change will happen. It just happen like on a bigger level. It happens on the smaller level.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then also, shout out to John Roscajo, one of my cousins. He did pass away. I want to say, I'm sorry I wasn't able to be there. I was working for the man today earlier, but I just want to say that you are a great person, and God bless the family and much love.
And one more question. I don't want to put you in a spot, but I have to ask you, since it's election season, who are you voting for?
Who am I voting for? Which election? Which race?
Presidency.
President? So it's going to be Biden and Trump, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, who do you think is the best candidate, in your opinion?
I think it's very clearly Biden.
Biden.
Right.
Okay.
And I think, there's a lot of criticism of Biden being kind of, an old guy and not the most dynamic, right?
Yeah.
But I think the thing is, one, Trump is only 2 years younger than Biden, so he's still an old man. Two, it's like
that's real shit. That's real.
When you look at the Biden infrastructure bill, when you look at the Inflation Reduction Act, when you look at the money that cities are accessing and actually dealing with climate change and seeing billions and billions of dollars going to infrastructure, I think the choice is clear. And plus, when you're voting, it's not just about the face, right? It's not just about who the president is. It's about who the cabinet is, right? Who's leading the department? Who's leading the Department of Labor? Who's leading the Department of Interior? The Secretary of State? All that, right? And I took a trip to DC and I met with these members of the cabinet, right? I met with Deb Haaland. I met with Pete Buttigieg. I saw Julie Su and Catherine Tai. And these are all like members of the cabinet, and they are very dynamic. They have the interests of working, average working class people in their hearts and minds, and they are doing a lot. And so you're not just voting for Biden, you're voting for an administration that will prioritize the well-being of people over that of private profits. So
Okay.
That's who I'll be voting for.
Yeah.
And I do have my criticism of Biden, right?
Yeah.
He can do a lot better.
Physically, yeah, especially with
But
even in the primaries, right? When we look at the primaries, we see, Marianne, but honestly, I'm really looking more towards Phillips, right? And Phillips kind of has more of a better objective and a better background. And so I think what you said a lot is like, it's really the background people, right? Who is running in the background, right? But also, if you're going to look at it, goddamn, look at the primaries. You know what I mean? Like there's like a lot of things you got to look at. It's not just what you see on what you see everywhere. It's what you least see that you have to actually look for. So the information has to be actually looked for. It cannot just be there all the time. Because if it's there all the time, it's not actually accurate.
And there's definitely a problem where we're looking at another election with Biden and Trump again.
Yeah.
Two people in their 80s. I mean, it's just
my goodness.
Our system needs to be different, right? That allows for upstart candidates to have a chance, to have third parties have a chance, right? That's why I'm a big supporter of ranked choice voting, right? To where you can like vote for who you want to as your number one choice, right?
Yeah.
It could be your local mayor, it could be anyone. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
But then if that person doesn't get enough votes, it goes to the next person, right? Your second choice. And maybe you vote for the people, maybe you vote for I don't know, I'm just making this up. Maybe you vote for the Workers' Party, right?
Yeah,
You really want to support the workers. That's number one. But they're not viable, right? So your number two choice is Biden.
Yeah.
So then your vote is not wasted. It goes to Biden next, right? And so I think ranked choice voting is really what we need in American democracy.
I don't like the two-party system. I don't like the two-party system.
Yeah.
It's
like a narrative. It's
because
like
most people are in the middle.
narrative.
Most people are like the average person.
Most people are all over the place.
Yeah, all over
right?
the place,
You talk to
right?
people,
Yeah,
they're all over the place on the issues.
Yeah, so
right?
I don't like the two-party
It's just
system.
blah blah blah.
What we do need is more direct democracy at the national level. So that means the ability to put measures on the ballot, right? Like in California, we always vote on a series of propositions and measures, and that is the best way of democracy. Is just letting the people decide, right? Not those in Washington D.C., but letting the people decide. Like, should we legalize or criminalize abortion, right?
Yeah.
Should we legalize or criminalize cannabis, right? Like, go down the list and let the people decide what they want. I think that's something that we should have as an option.
Yeah, that's definitely not a conversation, not a discussion. Which is part two next time.
Right.
But James, appreciate your time. Thank you for making the time. As always, definitely support James. If you want to find out more information, definitely go to his social media links that he provided. But don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.
Yep. Thank you.
And go vote. Y'all go vote. Peace, y'all.